One morning, as Gregor Samsa was waking up from anxious dreams, he discovered that in bed he had been changed into a monstrous verminous bug. He lay on his armor-hard back and saw, as he lifted his head up a little, his brown, arched abdomen divided up into rigid bow-like sections. From this height, the blanket, just about ready to slide off completely, could hardly stay in place. His numerous legs, pitifully thin in comparison to the rest of his body, flickered helplessly before his eyes. "What's happened to me?" he thought. It was no dream. His room, a proper room for a human being, only somewhat too small, lay quietly between the four well-known walls. Above the table, on which an unpacked collection of sample cloth goods was spread out, Samsa was a travelling salesman, hung the picture which he had cut out of an illustrated magazine a little while ago and set in a pretty frame. Gregor's glance then turned to the window. The dreary weather. The raindrops were falling audibly down on the metal window ledge, made him quite sad. "Why don't I keep sleeping for a little while longer and forget all this foolishness?" he told himself. But this was entirely impractical, for he was used to sleeping on his right side, and in his present state he couldn't get himself into this position. No matter how hard he threw himself onto his right side, he always rolled again onto his back. He must have tried it 100 times, closing his eyes so that he would not have to see the wriggling legs, and gave up only when he began to feel a light, dull pain in his side, which he had never felt before. "Oh God," he thought, "what a demanding job I've chosen. Day in, day out on the road. The stresses of trade are much greater than the work going on at head office. And in addition to that, I have to deal with the problems of travelling, the worries about train connections, irregular bad food, temporary and constantly changing human relationships which never come from the heart. To hell with it all." He felt a slight itching on the top of his abdomen. He slowly pushed himself on his back closer to the bedpost so that he could lift his head more easily, found the itchy part, which was entirely covered with small white spots. He did not know what to make of them, and wanted to feel the place with a leg. But he retracted it immediately, for the contact felt like a cold shower all over him. He slid back again into his earlier position. "This getting up early," he thought, "makes a man quite idiotic. A man must have his sleep. If I didn't hold back for my parents' sake, I would have quit ages ago. I would have gone to the boss and told him just what I think from the bottom of my heart. He would have fallen right off his desk. How weird it is to sit up at the desk and talk down to the employee from way up there. The boss has trouble hearing, so the employee has to step up quite close to him. Anyway, I haven't completely given up that hope yet. Once I've got together the money to pay off the parents' debt to him, that should take another 5 or 6 years. I'll do it for sure. Then I'll make the big break. In any case, right now I have to get up. My train leaves at 5 o'clock. And he looked over at the alarm clock ticking away by the chest of drawers. Good God, he thought. It was 6:30, and the hands were going quietly on. Could the alarm have failed to ring? One saw from the bed that it was properly set for 4 o'clock. Certainly, it had rung. Yes, but was it possible to sleep through this noise that made the furniture shake? Now, it's true he'd not slept quietly, but evidently he'd slept all the more deeply. Still, what should he do now? The next train left at 7 o'clock. To catch that one, he would have to go in a mad rush. The sample collection wasn't packed up yet, and he really didn't feel particularly fresh and active. And even if he caught the train, there was no avoiding a blow-up with the manager. As he was thinking all this over in the greatest haste, without being able to make the decision to get out of bed, the alarm clock was indicating exactly 7:15. There was a cautious knock on the door by the head of the bed. "Gregor," a voice called. It was his mother. "It's 7:15. Don't you want to be on your way?" The soft voice. Gregor was startled when he heard his voice answering. It was clearly and unmistakably his earlier voice, but in it was intermingled, as if from below, a painful squeaking. Gregor wanted to answer in detail and explain everything, but in these circumstances he confined himself to saying, Yes, thank you, Mother. I'm getting up right away." It was very easy to throw aside the blanket. He needed only to push himself up a little, and it fell by itself. But to continue was difficult, particularly because he was so unusually wide. He needed arms and hands to push himself upright. Instead of these, however, he had only many small limbs which were moving continuously with very different motions, and which, in addition, he was unable to control. If he wanted to bend one of them, then it was the first to extend itself. And if he finally succeeded doing with this limb what he wanted, in the meantime all the others, as if left free, moved around in an excessively painful agitation. "But I must not stay in bed uselessly," said Gregor to himself. As Gregor was in the process of lifting himself half out of bed, it struck him how easy all this would be if someone were to come to his aid. Now, quite apart from the fact that the doors were locked, should he really call out for help? Then there was a ring at the door of the apartment. "That's someone from the office," he told himself. "They aren't opening," Gregor said to himself, caught up in some absurd hope. But of course then, as usual, the servant girl with her firm tread went to the door and opened it. Gregor needed to hear only the visitor's first word of greeting to recognize immediately who it was: the manager himself. Gregor swung himself with all his might out of the bed. There was a loud thud, but not a real crash. The fall was absorbed somewhat by the carpet, but he had not held his head up with sufficient care and had hit it. He turned his head, irritated and in pain, and rubbed it on the carpet. "Something has fallen in there," said the manager in the next room on the left.